because I always say that so many of us suffer from the hero complex. I'm going to be your hero and I'm going to rescue you from your life. It ends poorly. If you're not spending 50% in thinking about what are you going to do, why you're going to do it, how are you going to do it, who do you need, where's the shortcuts, where's the resources, who knows what. If you're not spending time in the thinking before you do the planning, you're setting yourself up to fail. Most people get an idea and execute. They're missing 75% of a proven formula over and over and over again. If I want all these things, and then I go, okay, now that you have the list of 10 things about you want, now match them with what you're willing to trade. That's where people get stuck.
If 2 billion in sales and 6 successful exits sounds like something you'd be interested in, today I have one of my favorite people on the Prime People podcast. We have Amelia Antonetti on. She is somebody who rubs shoulders with some incredible people. She's been featured on the Oprah Winfrey Show, Steve Harvey Show, Dr. Phil, CNBC, BBC. She is a brain that really understands human behavior at a level that I don't really think many others do. But she's just a person who is so accessible and has a way of sharing her knowledge with the world. Amelia, welcome to the Prime People podcast.
I am so excited to be here. I've been waiting. This is great. This is going to be fun.
Long time overdue. And I think we've spent probably hundreds of hours up to this point collaborating in different spaces around human behavior. First thing that I'll jump right into is, as a team leader in real estate, probably one of the biggest struggles that I have is letting my team know that, I care about them and I want them to develop as human beings, because it can be a very lonely business. They're all doing their own thing. Everybody's world is the most important. And I think building culture and getting people together so that they realize that we're more similar than we are different is incredibly important. But if you were talking to a team leader, how would you guide somebody like myself into making sure that they're stewarding and leading an organization in a great manner?
I think that the hardest skill for leaders, who tend to be overachievers is staying on their side, right? To be able to have a conversation with the intended intent, right? Delivering your intention, but not jumping over onto their side, because that's where we actually cause damage. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times we see more in them than they see in themselves. And it's a very delicate balance between pushing what you see onto them, which is going to cause a reaction depending on if it collides or causes resistance with their worldview on how they see themselves. And I see what happens time and time and time again is leaders lean in really heavily with their, say, direct reports. And they're like, I did this, I did this, I did this, I provided that, I've done bonuses, I've done training, I did all these things, and they left. Where they don't understand was that they did not respect their side of the equation. When you talk about the manager squeeze right now, managers are saying, where is it the employee's responsibility along with my own to deliver the outcome? And that becomes where these behavioral tools are critical, to invite somebody into the space, right, where they can grow and develop. But you can't do it for them. It has to be their willingness, awareness, will, and action, their awareness, I want to grow. Their willingness to say, if I'm going to grow into this opportunity, into this next position, into this next phase of responsibility, then I have to do the work of what has to stop being me and what needs to become me, without the leader, the CEO, the family environment being the crutch. Because I always say that so many of us suffer from the hero complex. I'm going to be your hero and I'm going to rescue you from your life. It ends poorly. If you set up a hero dynamic with you and your team, you and your spouse, you and whoever, the only way that story ends is in bitter, angry, and resentful, because you robbed me of my lesson. And that's what's so hard, is that we see these diamonds in the rough. We really want to lean in and make their lives amazing without realizing that they have to choose it.
That's a super interesting take, and I think very accurate. Like, I can take you into the background of, say, a real estate team, where your average team You have a leader that has enough business that he can share with the team. So new agents join in because they want some of that business. Maybe they're fresh. They don't have any business of their own. Then they get a couple deals into their chamber. Then they finally start building a book of business 3 to 5 years into the business, and they bounce from the team because they don't want to deal with the splits anymore. When the team leaders complain, well, I did all the training and I built their career and I built their life. It's everything you described, where our retention's been off the charts, because I've always told my team that I don't need them to be okay. They probably don't need me to be okay. Together, we're better than we are apart. But I made the mistake that you said there, where I always tried to solve it for them, right? I always went through, oh, I'll show you how to prospect, or I'll do it for you. Like, where do you draw the line? Prospecting, for example. Like, if I need to train them to be able to get rid of call reluctance, call leads back, follow up on their promises, how do I just get them to do that without doing it for them?
By having them define the experience. Right? In order to know if your language is and your teaching is transferring, right? Is the knowledge transferring? You have to be able to understand where they are in the journey, right? Especially if it's a blind turn, right? You know it because you've done it 1,000 times, but now you're taking them around the blind turn. And so you have to see how many stepping stones are they aware of, and then being able to go, what is the experience you're trying to create here? So especially like in your industry where there's a lot of resistance, you have to be able to say, well, what's the outcome I'm trying to do here? Right.
Are you talking from the agent to the consumer perspective?
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the dynamic. You're teaching them how to think.
Okay.
That's what you're trying to do, to say, well, what do I want the experience to be here, right? Whether they're trying to understand whether something is viable or not viable, if they're trying to understand where they are in the sales process, you're trying to lead them into asking the question that gives the answer. Most of the time, junior people push. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. It's a great deal. The opportunity is going away. It's a once in a lifetime. Right? It's that type of energy. Without understanding the energy that you're creating is a non-selling environment, right? The minute you tell your true defined target audience, it's the only one, it's just for you, it's a limited time, that's a low-level sale.
It is, yeah.
I'm not buying from you.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're not my salesperson. I don't trust you to come to say, here's an opportunity that I believe fits how you take action in life. Right? It's an investment opportunity. It's it's the house of your dreams, whatever the case may be. You have to be able to come to say, listen, I want to lay out what I think I heard. And then be able to say, is this something you would like me to invite you to? The word invitation is powerful. The word willing or unwilling. Are you willing or unwilling to take a look at the opportunity? It only leads you to yes or no.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think getting to know is what I always try to do with leads. So I was going through there in my brain. I'm like, earlier in my career, it would have been the hard sell approach where somebody calls you on something because nobody trained me any differently. But after talking to thousands of people, if I was thinking about you, all I would do is I would just ask if you're in the market or not. Like, hey, you called on this ad like 4 years ago. It's Justin from Prime. Something else popped up on my desk. Are you even still in the market? And then if you're like, no, I'll be like, amazing. Like, do you have a house and do you need info on like what your neighbor's house over? Yeah. Then all of a sudden you're getting into more relationship. I'm like trying to figure out how I can actually serve you versus, if I tell you I have something off market, and you're like, yeah, actually I am still in the market. What do you have? You're not selling, you're going through a discovery process. And I like what you said about teaching people how to think, because I think a huge mistake agents make is they teach scripts when I think you should teach patterns and skills rather than scripts, right?
And then the building of the base. People don't understand how to build a sustainable network, right? So just knowing my age and how long I've been around, right? The call coming from you to me is not only, Amelia, are you interested in the property? To be able to say, oh, based on my timeline, your son would be right around 30. Are you looking for an opportunity for him?
Oh, amazing.
Are you looking for investment? Because my purchasing goes beyond me.
Yeah.
My purchasing is, we're looking to move to that area. Well, that means I've got executives that need to relocate. And so it's not just the obvious sale. It's saying, can you get yourself into my life and to be able to show me what I would be thinking? Because if you start saying, hey, listen, you're about the age where your son would be looking. Now I'm like, wow, you've been paying attention, right? Now I've got a different bond of trust. It's not the first dollar. It's, can you harvest a relationship for multiple touch points of dollars? Yeah. Right? Because then that's where the referral comes in. People don't understand that how you start the relationship is how it will end. So if you don't take the time to start the relationship for multiple touch points that are going to go over a sustainable time, you set your parameters too narrow. I see you as a one-shot wonder, not somebody who's going to be in a relationship, because I don't understand the value. You have to be able to establish for me that not only are you the value in the one product that you sell, you have the information of every neighborhood, every demographic, every opportunity stems around your footprint. And so you know things that I want to know in the area beyond just the one purchase. It's the value that you add. People, for some reason, have a tough time monetizing their knowledge. They take their business as the products I sell or as this thing. And I'm like, well, where is your services for your knowledge? Why are you not having multiple streams of income by charging for the experience, for charging for the knowledge, for charging for the less headache, the brain damage part, right? All those other things are assets that you provide. But if the business doesn't have the bandwidth in order to be able to create those streams of income, if you don't have your people thinking about the entire experience, then you're not setting the communication for the product to live, right? First, your people have to be aware, and then the products come from it. And so that's when we talk about, for entrepreneurs, how big can you think? Can you force yourself to think far beyond where you are today is what creates the multiplier of what your business is worth. It's hard to think beyond what's here today. That's why mentorship, forum groups, all these forces you to think so much bigger. Even if you don't produce that product, if the blueprint for that product is in your business plan, then it increases the value when you go to exit, because you've already given somebody the blueprint.
Yeah, and I don't think people think about that ahead of time. We just did a training session here at Prime. We do it every Tuesday from 1 to 2. And we start, I do basic training like January till spring, just literally the basic components of what it means to be a real estate agent. And then we get into a little bit more tactical things. Like today we did time management, and I talked about the front loaded year, and I talked about my buckets are faith, family, fitness, fun, finances. And I talked about how I map out my entire year in the fall for the next year and what my ambitions and my goals are. And I slowly boil it down to like, what does the perfect week look like? And it shocked them to actually see my work week is technically 4 days of repeating tasks. And the only 3 tasks that matter are learning the market every single day, prospecting, and marketing. And if I do those 3 tasks 4 days a week, I'm ahead of 90% of the competition. Now I still work Fridays and Saturdays 90% of the time. I let the equipment rest on Sundays. If something pops up, sure, I'll do it. But what I explained to them was, if you don't have a framework, just like you said, you don't have a business. And I even equated it to, say, a CRM. I said, take that framework now and build an actual database, and your database will be worth millions of dollars to the right person if your data is clean. But I think a lot of people have a very dirty calendar and a very dirty database where there's no value to it because you couldn't interpret it if you were just looking at it objectively, right?
Right. And that's, I mean, that was a whole reason, for me to create a system, a piece of technology that forces people to link, to think, to close the gap between what they say and how they're actually showing up, and then what to do about it, right? That's what the software does. And so what I find more often than not is that people do not know what the ROI is for every time investment, right? So if you're using a calendar management system, right, or if you're you're managing time blocks, if you don't understand what the beginning, middle, and end is in that time block of what is the outcome, what is it worth, then you can't make decisions. And I go over and over and over again with the top performers. Top performers follow this formula. The success formula is 50% is in the thinking, 25% is the planning, 25% is in the execution. It never fails. If you're not spending 50% in thinking about what are you going to do, why you're going to do it, how are you going to do it, who do you need, where's the shortcuts, where's the resources, who knows what. If you're not spending time in the thinking before you do the planning, you're setting yourself up to fail. Most people get an idea and execute. They're missing 75% of a proven formula over and over and over again. If you follow like the documentary between Buffett and Bill Gates, right? Both of them get together every year and they spend the week thinking. So much of their time is spent thinking. Like you were saying, part of your habit is the thinking of what's happening in the marketplace, looking, discovering knowledge, right? The thinking part of it. And so many people are so burnt out and they're like, I cannot fit anything else in my day. They literally run through their entire day. And I'm like, that's the problem. It's not about bringing more, not adding more. It's the elimination, what you won't do. Jesse Eisler says an amazing thing about the pivotal point in his career is when he actually started to get very confident on what he was not going to do. When people were like, can I have 5 minutes of your time to run this idea behind you? Then I was like, no, I don't want to be in those conversations. I'm not involved. That's not what I'm doing. Really taking your energy with high intention of where does it return? If I spent 5 minutes trying to help everybody who's got a great idea, I would be out of business, right? And so that's where those minimum standards must be. You have to, one, decide what your highest and best use is, then be able to communicate to everybody what your minimum standards is. And that's what I try to teach is in this dialogue between leader and teammate is how do you get people to respond with the same severity that you do? And that's in these conversations, right? So I'll give you just an example. If I'm having a conversations with my EA, right? And I say to you, listen, the reality is, right, we have a time game. I have 800 weeks left in my life. That's what I have, 800 weeks. You're the most important person in my life to help me allocate how I use those times. Here's the things that are my priority. I want to make sure that I spend time honoring the things that I value. God, family, partnerships, my community, my work, right? You're not going to remember me, but I want you to remember my work. So when you take your power and schedule my time, the more you can honor what I'm telling you is important to me, the more you're investing those 800 weeks for not just my benefit, but for those people who rely on me. When you have a conversation like that, they take their job very differently than if you go, you're managing my calendar. You're not managing my calendar. You're managing the 800 weeks I have left. That's a very different conversation.
And when you're dealing with somebody like that, how far do you go in terms of sharing your vision and beyond just, hey, this is really important to me, so that they feel like they can execute and not be afraid to screw up? Because I think so many people, especially when they're in a position like that, it's going to be death by 1,000 questions. And you want to give them the creative control to just do things and say, hey, I did this. And there's a learning process that has to happen. So they learn how you think and so on and so forth. So how do you train people into those types of positions where they can feel like they have the power to execute against your vision?
So don't communicate from the standpoint that the nucleus is your vision.
Yeah.
Because now that's about you and I don't care about you. Right. And so what you have to be able to do is communicate from their perspective, a piece that's their vision that aligns with the vision of the company. It has to be from the employee standpoint. We keep using older methodology and older thinking that I'm going to sell you on my vision. Not anymore, not in this marketplace. I don't care about your vision.
Yeah.
I care about my life. So I have to understand how every teammate, right, what is their lever for belonging, meaning, growth and development, what they value and what they have attached to a reward system. So when I'm talking to my EA using the same example about I am inviting you into this opportunity where you're in control of my 800 weeks, I'm pulling on the lever of belonging to something that is greater than calendar management, right? Something that has meaning. meaning that now she understands the power that she has, not just in my life, but where she gives permissions to or not have access to me, right? I'm speaking from her point of view on her vision that she wants to have a life that's meaningful, that's valuable, that she's contributing to something beyond her. And so my language is from her perspective, right? And so when you can bring their perspective and what they value into alignment of what you value, that's where you create momentum. But we have to move away for I'm going to convince you or sell you on my vision and you're going to lean into it. Now that the marketplace is saying, I want to be a whole person and not a work product, we as leaders have to change our approach to say we've got to stop selling people on our vision. That's not what's going to get them to join our tribe. They're going to join our tribe because they're going to get what they want out of their life based on whether it's remote working or in the office or whether growing, whatever it is that they value. We have to put ourselves through that lens. And most importantly, which is the big game changer now, is it's the middle that's dying, right? It's not the employee and it's not the CEO. It's the people in the middle that is trying to still lead the employees, and they're unhappy and they're not hitting their goals, but the deliverables and the accountability is still here from the owner or the CEO. They're getting squished in the middle because they don't have behavioral tools, because they don't have the decoding of people of what's really going on. They're doing the best that they can, and to the point they're like, you know what? I am out. We're losing our best managers because they don't have the integration of HI, human intelligence, and AI, artificial intelligence, as it relates to their specific deliverables in the company.
Yeah, I think absolutely. There's a few things I want to unpack there. Have you read the book, The Motive, by any chance?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Amazing book. And it reminds me a lot of that, of why people choose companies these days. And back in the day, it was, you go work for somebody until you work your way up to management, then you own the company, and then you spend your whole life on vacation. The role of a CEO in today's world, in my opinion, is to really stand in the gap and be a firefighter and actually have the toughest job of making sure that the culture, the leadership, the support, the training, and the deal flow are in place. And I think you hit on something big when you said, get away from vision, to the standpoint that people are choosing to align themselves with companies that offer a platform and core values. And they're going to be attracted to companies that have similar core values to they do, and they want to work within an ecosystem. But the owners of those companies need to be paying attention to much more than just a P&L statement or the finances component of it. It's the human capital and understanding. And again, from a management perspective, everybody will run into this, what people are actually experiencing versus what they're telling you. Because what they're going to tell you is their highlight reel. What their Instagram is going to show you is their highlight reel, but their relationship may be imploding, or they may not be taking care of their health. They may be addicted to substances. And you can't help them if you don't have a way of measuring those components of their life and being in community with somebody. And I think there's going to be a natural attrition or a natural resistance for people, and from an employee perspective, to want to overshare with people who are in a leadership position. But I think that the leaders of the future are going to try to empower themselves to be in a position to help people holistically, well beyond just hitting their sales targets. So I guess, what does the ideal manager-employee relationship in the future look like to somebody like yourself?
Yeah, I mean, we're really moving into the whole person. I mean, it doesn't matter what white paper, what report, what statistic you look at. The scream is at people's top of the lungs. They want to have the room to be a whole person. And so the things that they're engaging in are things that are in their belief system of what makes them a whole person. It's why you hear so much emphasis on health and wellness, right? They don't want to say, listen, I'm not going to do what my parents did. I'm not giving you 20, 30 years of my life, or I'm going to be so broken from the inside, and then I'm too sick to actually do anything. They watched their parents be fat, divorced, broke, and unhappy. And so you can't sell that. And so now you've got to go about, okay, all of you is important. And in order for all of you to be important, I need to know where I have permissions. Where are you inviting me in to this alliance so that we can be better together, right? And where is it that you want me to respect your privacy? Because then I can lean into a conversation to say, I am aware that you have said, let's just say exercise is important to you. would you be open to me saying, hey, how about we have a walking meeting, right? Since you want to exercise, how about our next meeting, we're walking while we're doing the meeting? Hey, I notice exercise is important to you. So how about if we set a reminder so that I remember and you remember that it's in our best interest that you're out of here by 6 o'clock so you can take your night walk. It's about having conversations to say, where do you want my support? And then being accountable, right? The consistency of that. The big problem inside of organizations from the employee's perspective is I take these surveys, I tell people what I want, and nothing happens. So what I tell the managers is don't overcommit, right? Start small. It's small, tiny things over a long period of time that makes the changes that we're actually looking for. I can't even tell you. So like when we do behavior analysis and we share it with leaders, managers, leaders, CEOs, simple things like use my name. People are like, what? I'm like, think about how many conversations that you have every single day where you just take it for granted, right? That we're talking and that I know you mean me and I know you mean you, right? We start conversations where we don't say, good morning, Amelia. You don't use my name. And so if my conversations, you don't use my name, subconsciously, I don't belong to you. Subconsciously, I don't have meaning. And those are the things that are missing. We don't smile. We don't greet people. We're looking down at our phone. And so the human interaction, the human dynamic of what makes humans connect has not changed. We keep saying it's changed. No, we are the loneliest society that has ever existed because we don't make eye contact. We don't use each other's names. We don't touch. We literally, because of a whole movement that happened, people are standing more than 4 feet away because they're frightened. And so in your energy, I'm like, they're afraid of me. And so we wonder why things are collapsing within our communities is because people have gotten, I don't see, I don't care. I'm just going to put my head down and I'm going to try to retreat to safety. But are we?
Yeah. Yeah, lock down the world for 2 years and see what happens as well too. You're still seeing a whole generation of children that are being raised that are still feeling the effect of that. And even people, I was talking to a friend today, and with the strain from an economic perspective, high interest rate environment, so, money leads to relationship issues, which leads to lower workflow, which leads to substance abuse, bad eating habits. You can see it. It's symptomatic out there. And I think the way that you fix it isn't by hiding from it. It's by tracking. I know you're big on that too. Like I've always been somebody that when I'm trying to fix something, I track the habit at the end of the week. I tally it up and I say, okay, I want to get good sleep 7 nights a week. And I had lots of weeks where I had 2, 3, 4s out of 7s. And now I'm very consistent in my sleep patterns in terms of personal accountability and developing great habits to become a complete human. What would you encourage people to do?
I think that they really have to think about what they're willing to trade. See, we're really good at saying, I want these things. I want better sleep. I want a more intimate relationship. I want time with my family. I want time with my kids. I want all these things. And then I go, okay, now that you have the list of 10 things about you want, now match them with what you're willing to trade. That's where people get stuck.
Yeah.
They're like, well, what do you mean? Well, if you want time with your family, then you're going to trade, right, the top line of your gross sales because you can only be so many places at one time. Now, can you get into the minutia to say, I'm going to start closing bigger deals with the same amount of time? Yes, you can. But in the swing, you are trading.
Yeah.
Right? In the growth, you are trading. And you have to be willing to sacrifice. The thing that I say as a behaviorist over and over and over again, and I have yet to have anybody prove me wrong, your scale of success equals your ability to suffer. The more you have suffered, the more the ceiling is available for success, right? Think about the greatest success stories we've ever had. It came from suffering. And so if we're raising snowflakes, we have to realize that because they've never suffered, we have capped them with a ceiling where they can't grow because they're learning what they should have learned in the home in the work environment. They're learning that everybody doesn't get a trophy. They're learning that corrective criticism, right, is part, that ouch factor is part of life. Life hurts. It's supposed to, because that's how you grow. It's your response to the ouch that determines success or failure. People who have sustainable success, every one of them have learned to suffer in the pain in order to grow, right? So whether you want to get in shape, it's going to be painful, right? Can't have the donuts and whatever, painful. You have to say, what am I willing to sacrifice? What am I willing to trade? When you go through that exercise in your brain, you're doing the subconscious work so that you're not creating the resistance. Because what happens when you set a goal, the resistance is happening subconsciously. When you bring it to your conscious mind to say, this is what I want and this is what I'm willing to give up, you actually say it and bring it to your conscious mind, you're more willing to actually achieve it now. Because you've already said, I'm going to give up whatever. I'm going to give up watching 4 episodes of Netflix. I'm going to give up staying up after 9. I'm going to give up some social interactions. I'm going to give up being at more parties or being at more whatever. I'm going to give up scrolling time. Whatever. You have to say these things I'm walking away from in order to have the thing that I want. And that changes the entire frequency of the formula that you're trying to bring into your life.
Yeah, I think people have actions and ambitions, right? They quite often they put forth these giant ambitions, but then if you look at their actions, they don't track. And you only can change one or the other. You can change your ambitions, or you can change your actions. It's a discovering process. I think that feeling the resistance, feeling the pain has been some of the greatest growths I've ever had have come from the most painful situations of perceived loss, until I realized that that life wasn't for me. It wasn't what I actually wanted. And it was by figuring that out.
Or it was a story. It never existed.
For sure.
When I try to work with people that are healing, I have to really lean into them to say, you are mourning something that never existed, right? You're mourning the relationship that didn't exist. You're mourning the I coulda, woulda, shoulda, had. It wasn't really there, right? The loss is the story, not the actuality. And when you start talking about minimum standards, and I get this all the time, people are like, oh my God, like you're so bold. I'm like, am I? Really? Like my time is valuable. I have literally an 8-minute rule. Mm-hmm. If you're 8 minutes, you're going to have to reschedule.
Yeah, I like that a lot, actually.
Right?
I think that's,
and people
that's
say,
totally respectful.
You don't really mean you're going to hang up the Zoom call. You don't really mean you're going to get up to go. Literally, I was at a meeting, no notice, just sitting there, 8 minutes, right? My timer went off. I'm like, okay, I packed up my stuff. I started to walk out of the restaurant. The person who was walking in going, I'm sorry, I just got here. And I'm like, you're going to have to reschedule. He's like, you're kidding me. And I'm like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm like, if you could not, before the pending event, you knew you were running late.
Yeah.
And 8 minutes. So you basically had 16 to 20 minutes knowing you were going to late, not to communicate with me. That's below my standards.
Yeah.
And so people are like, but he could have been a client. I'm like, he could have been a lot of things, but none of it exists. Yeah. I lost nothing because it didn't exist. I don't live my life on hopes and dreams. Maybe coulda, woulda, shoulda. I look at effort. I look at values. I look at my standards and ask if you meet them. If you don't meet my standards, that's on you. That's not me. I don't feel bad. That's your choice. You have a different relationship than time than I do. No big deal. No judgment, no harm, no foul. We just learned that we are probably not traveling in the same path. And that's okay. There's room for all of us. My relationship with time is much tighter, right? If I'm going to be late in any way, shape, or form, you're going to get a communication way ahead of time that then says something like, I'm going to be late. I'm taking full responsibility of me being late. What works better for you? Would you like to start 5 minutes late, or is it more easier for you
to reschedule?
Yes.
So respectful.
The responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I heard a long time ago that early's on time's late, late's unacceptable. And like, if I was even 3 minutes late, you'd be getting a play-by-play from me. It'd be like, this is where I am. This is where I'm going to be. Exact same conversation.
And honoring my choice. That absolutely. If my choice is let's reschedule, you can't be upset with that. You have 100%. To accept that's my choice because your action created a reaction. And so in these dynamics, this is what's missing in the life skills is people are not adhering to what they value. And it's creating such a muddled field that people don't know how to behave. And I'm like, if people are not behaving properly around you, part of that is you.
Yeah, for sure.
You
Yeah,
haven't.
actually, you said that to me probably a year and a half or 2 years ago. I had asked you a question about team standards because standards are very simple, right? Lead comes in, it gets touched immediately. You get an appointment within the first 24 hours. And say I'm working with Amelia and she's our seller. You update her minimum once a week as to lead activity, what's happening in the market, what are you doing to get the property sold? And my team wasn't adhering to the standard. And I remember asking you the question about like, how do I hold them to the standards? Like, well, hold them to the standard. Like the answer is the answer, and avoiding uncomfortable conversations or kind candor, like Gary Vee likes to say nowadays, led to probably more frustration or lack of relationship building than just saying, here's the standard, here's what's expected of you. If you don't know how to execute against that, awesome. Let's talk about it. You don't have to be sad. You don't have to cry in the corner about it. Like, let's talk about what you don't understand about what's expected of you. And where am I failing as a leader to provide you the training? Well, now that you have the training, it's back on you, and you got to be a big boy or girl, pull your pants up
I think
and
the
execute,
hardest
right?
thing for me to learn was letting go.
Yeah.
Right? To really allow somebody or opportunities to walk out of my life. I thought that the proper response was to chase them and to convince them. What I have learned in 38 years of business is if you don't see my value and you don't celebrate who I am and don't invite me into whatever it is, I'm not chasing you. I'm not convincing you. So if you would like to leave, there's the door. I am not going to beg you to stay. And that includes clients. And people are like, how can you have that mentality? Because they're going to leave anyway. You're just saving the expense, the energy, and the investment into something that's going to end anyway. So the sooner you accept exactly somebody's behavior, accept the level of effort. I do not measure how somebody says they feel about me. I measure their effort in order to have me in their life, including clients, right? I love to overserve, but when I serve, there is a response on their side. It is a dynamic of giving and receiving and measurable growth on the client side and on my side. I have to continue to grow in order to continue to serve. And so if I stop, I'm hurting them. I've got to stay in front of them. And so those are the honest conversations about how would you like to be served? And do you feel like you being served on how I think I'm delivering it? So people are like, oh, I didn't really realize that was part of the service. Like I didn't realize that effort even existed. Those candid conversations is what builds the value into the relationship. A lot of times people don't know. And so I get this all the time. People go, oh, people didn't realize how great it was until they left and went somewhere else. And I'm like, you do realize that's on you.
Yeah.
That's on you.
You make me think of a recent situation. Actually, we had a client that, 3 years I nurtured this client, and I was probably not doing the best job in terms of a qualification at the beginning to make sure that that exchange was equal and very clear as to here's what we provide, here's what's expected of you. And I noticed a couple glimmers during the relationship of disrespect to one of my team members. And I'm like, that's kind of a weird thing. Well, she's stressed. Maybe it's just a stress response. And then I remember I was doing a property tour of the client and I read my text messages and I saw how she had responded to something my team member said. And I took about 5 seconds and I simply responded, I'm going to send you termination paperwork today. I don't think we're the right fit for each other. She proceeded to go bonkers for about 45 minutes and really said some things. And I was like, yeah, this is exactly the right decision for me. And it's a perceived loss from an agent where they're like, oh, what's the industry going to think about me? I lost a listing. I got fired. When in reality, I fired the client. People are so scared of how they're going to look. They don't do the thing that gives them so much freedom. My team member turned around, was so happy that I did it, was happy I stuck up for him. No more time, no more resources spent against a relationship that, again, is not in alignment with my core values. I'm sure there's an agent out there for that person. Yeah. It's just not me. And that's actually a good thing.
Yeah. And I think that when you really buy into the fact that highly successful people never come into a situation with judgment. The people that are judging you are below you, right? Mm-hmm. So when just using that scenario, highly successful people are never going to go, oh, well, he lost a client.
Sure.
Yeah, because of course you're going to lose it. We are all going to lose. Yeah. We're all going to lose clients. We're all going to lose employees. We're all going to lose. And so the mindset is never looking at what was lost, right? Because it's expected, right? So the criticism, I always say this to people, do not worry about the critics. The critics are behind you. That's where the noise is. Somebody in front of you will never be the one criticizing you. Never, right? And I give young people the analogy that if you're going to work out and you are overweight, the person at the gym that's the most in shape is going to go, way to go, girl.
Absolutely.
You got it. They're not coming over criticizing. The person who's criticizing is the other person next to you that has the same weight problem you do. That's who's criticizing. And so when you really lean into the fact that your real audience is pulling for you, your real audience wants you to win. It's the people that are creating the noise and the distractions and the blockers that you've got to move away from. The noise is the problem. And so it's not about learning how to defend your position. It's about wishing them well.
Yeah. Going back to what you said earlier, it's actually about the silence. I had reworked my entire schedule to get rid of my Monday morning meetings so I could be in deep work with my wife and spend time thinking, like you said, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, like thinking and being able to hear the silence is one of the most powerful things for people. And, understand, I think people hide from it because they're scared about who they are, which is another conversation for another day. I want to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions and get you out of here. I love that last piece of what you just shared. If you had to give one piece of advice to yourself as you were just starting over, what would that piece of advice be?
I will tell you that it came to me from Oprah. She said, when people show you who they are, just believe them. And I think that my younger self wanted to convince myself there was something more there than there was. And so that would be my advice. Just believe what people present themselves, because that's who they are.
Yeah, we can tell ourselves some interesting stories about people and create some fantastic narratives. Yep. What piece of advice would you give a CEO or team leader that is looking to really level up their organization?
That it's an inward journey, that everything that is halting your business, everything that's at the next level is going to be a very, very painful process of you going inward. It is not that you're lacking time, money, resources. You need to do a capital raise. You need better people. The minute you start telling me it's outside of yourself, that's going to be your pain point. What do you have to do differently about yourself? What do you have to change in your thinking? What do you have to change in your behavior? What did you have to change in your actions? That's going to allow yourself the capacity to scale to the next level. So anytime you're flatlining as a CEO, it literally is an inward journey. And that's the people who lean into it that actually has the big multiplying leapfrogs of growth.
Absolutely. That's a phenomenal answer. And I think a good time for somebody to write down a time in their calendar to get away with the coffee and think about what you can be improving on. Mm-hmm. Last but not least, how has failure shaped your life?
Oh, wow. There's been so many. I think that failure is the reflection of what it is that I don't want to admit about myself or I don't want to see. So anytime I have failed, it is about me, right? It's something that I was hoping was going to get better. It was something that I wanted to believe I didn't need to learn, that somebody else was going to do it. Failure has been that I wanted to drink my own Kool-Aid. You know what I mean? All of those things. Failure is literally Amelia's reflection of who I have to become. And so when I fail, I literally go, this part of me needs to die and this part of me needs to step in.
Love that answer. I think you can be a lot more pragmatic and objective than we tend to fall into on our own. Amelia, where can people connect with you?
If you, Amilya, Amelia.com, on all the social platforms. Amelia at Amilya, if you want to email me, I welcome the conversations.
Amazing. All her links are in the show notes below. Send her a private message. Make sure you connect with her and give her some feedback on something she helped you with. I'm shocked that you got that website. That is phenomenal that you got that URL. Good for you. And I can't wait to see what the next phase of your journey brings. I know you're working on some really cool stuff that I'm happy to share with the world once it's completely public. But till next time, thanks for coming on the show, Amelia.
Bye. Thank you.